Hello. Hello. Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Can everyone hear me? I know we got a full house here because this is kind of an important topic for a lot of folks, but welcome to our STR information session. Now, this is a session meant to do a Q&A with staff and also receive a presentation about how we're implementing the new ordinance that has been adopted by the City Council. We have been distributing out comment cards, and some of you may already know your question, or maybe you want to wait until after the presentation to submit those. We can walk around and pick those up. We will be answering questions only from the comment cards to make sure that we have a ruly and good discussion today. So if you do have a comment card and you're ready for us to pick it up, we can come by, or we can start with the presentation. I did, however, want to introduce myself and my team and let you all know who you're working with. So my name is Kate Hosier. I'm the city manager. To my right is Kelly Getman-Dissett, and she is our zoning administrator. That is Attorney Dave Eberly from the City Attorney's Office. Our STR inspector is Luke Thompson. And then the STR program coordinator is Megan Blodgett. Many of the owners and agents in this room probably have already talked to some of these folks. And so what we're here today is just to kind of go through how the city staff is implementing this ordinance. And of course, there's novel issues that always come up. We're looking to help work our way through that because while we're building on the old program, there are some new things here, and we're working our way through that process, and we're looking to work through that with the STR properties as well. So I know there's a lot of people watching in the hallway. We are recording this session, so if you can't see from where you're at, this will be available online. Of course, you can always email your questions to str@southavenmi.gov. Correct, Megan? Yeah. Okay. So with that, that's our expectation for today. If you can, keep the chatter down because there's a lot of people in this room. We are going to be showing a presentation on both of these overheads so you can see this. And so we'll get with the presentation. Again, we will be answering questions only from the comment cards. So if you want to wait to submit those after the presentation, we're happy to come by and pick those up. All right, thank you. Kelly?
I know that's not ideal with the screen in my face, but maybe. It said I started the presentation, but then it didn't start. Here we go. Okay, so thank you all for being here today. Like Kate said, this presentation today, this opportunity is really an opportunity for you to learn about the new short-term rental ordinance, to ask us questions that you have about how we're administering the program, how you all can obtain new short-term rental registrations, and any questions, comments, concerns that you have about the regulations themselves. We'd encourage you to write those down on paper, and those can be addressed at a later date. The focus for today is really how we're going to administer the program. So earlier this year in March, looks like we have a delay in the screen. The City Council adopted ordinance number 1097, which amended the short-term rental regulations in the Code of Ordinances. And then later in May, ordinance number 1099 amended the zoning ordinance and relevant short-term rental regulations. And then on August 1st, as many of you know, city staff began accepting applications under Article 5, which is the new short-term rental ordinance. So what has changed? As you know, the zoning compliance review process is new, and this is a step that you all have to go through before you can obtain a rental registration. And we'll talk a little bit more about this later. And we will make this presentation available later. So I see some of you trying to take pictures. You don't have to do that. We'll make this available for you later. There is a new fee schedule and the length of your rental registration is now going to be 2 years. Previously, you all obtained rental certificates. Now you'll all have a rental license that the owner is going to sign, and some of the language is different. We now have Class 1 and Class 2 rental licenses, where before you were accustomed to hearing about business and personal rentals. Previously, under the old ordinance, we had local agents. Now we have operators, which can be you as the owner or a licensed broker. One of the biggest changes is that short-term rentals are now non-conforming uses. It means they're not permitted uses in the zoning districts, and I know that's going to be one of the biggest questions that you all have for today, so we won't spend a lot of time on that right now, but we will hit on that later. And there's a new short-term rental overlay district where properties that haven't been licensed before can become licensed if you're in that overlay. So I know this chart is a little bit hard to see up on the screen, but this just gives you an overview of the licensing process from submitting that zoning compliance determination application to receiving that approval letter, and then submitting your short-term rental license application and fee to inspection, and then eventually finally receiving your license. And really, other than that first step of the zoning compliance determination, much of the licensing process is what you all are used to following. Turning in an application, getting an inspection, and then getting that certificate or license at the end. That should all feel very familiar. So let's talk a little bit about the zoning compliance determination. I think about 100 of our short-term rental property owners have submitted an application for zoning compliance determination. And we know that it is taking some time to work through these, but 100 applications is a lot. And there's a lot of staff time that's going into these, and then they're going on to our legal team for review before finally issuing a letter that says, yes, you are a lawful non-conforming short-term rental, and so that is why these take a long time. So this is the first step in applying for your short-term rental, and when you turn in your application, we are also asking for you to fill out, to give us a floor plan and a site plan. And most of you are doing a very good job of that. So thank you for those of you who've done it already. Thank you for your hard work. We've tried to provide for you on this slide just an example of the type of thing that we're looking for. So again, if you find these slides later, that should be helpful for you if you haven't gone through the process yet. The initial fee for your zoning compliance determination is $900, and then subsequent determinations in years following will be $250, and that is a new fee. So I know there are questions about that, and I'm sure we'll talk more about that later too. So for the licensing fees, these fees are now broken apart a little bit differently than they were in the past. There is an application and inspection fee, and then a licensing fee. And really, for those of you who had a business registration before, these fees have not increased. They are due upfront at the start of your 2-year registration, but all things told, the fee is the same over the course of the 2 years. So when you apply for your short-term rental registration for a Class 1, which remember was the business certificate, you're going to pay a $450 application and inspection fee, and then once you have completed your inspection and are ready to receive your license, that's another $750, and that total is $1,200, which is the same that you would pay now for 2 years of licensing. So as I mentioned before, the short-term, the new short-term rental regulations have created, have led to short-term rentals becoming a non-conforming use in all of the zoning districts. And so it's important to be aware that this may impact your plans for any substantial renovations that you may have at your rental property. So in the city of South Haven, like many local units of government, non-conforming uses and their structures are permitted to be maintained, but not to be enlarged, increased, intensified. And so if you are planning any remodeling at your short-term rental, we recommend that you contact us in advance, and we will discuss your project with you and how that may impact your rental license. I'm anticipating some questions about this to come as well, but a lot of these questions related to renovations, remodeling, and the status of your rental license will need to be answered on a one-on-one basis. We anticipate needing to look at your plans and speak with you one-on-one about what your plans are and how that will impact the rental license. So as I mentioned before, there is a short-term rental overlay, and I know this map's kind of hard to see, so we'll just kind of move past it for now. This map is available online and in a couple of different places, and in one place it's available as an interactive map, and so you can actually plug your address into that map and determine whether or not your property falls in the overlay district. So short-term rental dwelling units that are not currently registered, or dwelling units that are not currently registered as short-term rentals can become licensed after obtaining a special land use permit from the Planning Commission. Another way this benefits property owners that have been registered previously in the overlay district would be particularly for those who've been registered as personal units. Obtaining a special land use permit might give you an opportunity to become licensed as a Class 1, which would allow you to rent more. We've had, I think, we've received 4 or 5 applications for special land use from folks that would like to become licensed short-term rentals in the overlay district. The Planning Commission has granted 1 so far. So there are a couple of examples online in meeting packets if you are interested in applying and are looking for an example to follow. Here's another chart that just kind of shows the application process if you receive a special land use permit first from the Planning Commission. Very similar, it's just that that special land use step comes first before you can apply for the rental license. And then we've got resources locally. As Kate mentioned, program staff, Megan, Luke, myself, we're all available to answer questions. Our short-term rental website has program applications, has frequently asked questions. It has that short-term rental overlay map, and all sorts of other things that you might need. So that's all I have for a presentation.
Thank you, Kelly. I know that we have a number of cards already turned in, but what we'll do is we'll have some staff walk down the aisles and see if anyone else wants to turn in their cards so we can look at those. Now, the idea is that we're hopefully going to be able to answer the questions today. If not, we will take them back and generate this back out. The idea also is that we have recurring questions. We can update our FAQ with this information so that's all in one location. If we did not get your card, if you still have one up, just hold it up. We'll come back around.
Okay, so we have a question here. How has a special land use been approved already without going in front of the zoning board? And I think that we can answer that one. So special land use applications go in front of the Planning Commission in South Haven. The zoning board and Planning Commission are terms that might be used interchangeably, and those should not be confused with the Zoning Board of Appeals, which is a separate board that hears appeals of administrative decisions or considers requests for variances. So there is a possibility that something related to a short-term rental application may end up in front of the Zoning Board of Appeals, but a special land use permit actually is considered by the Planning Commission, and that is how a special land use has been approved. Ooh, this is a threefer. Okay, so the first question is, why is an operator required to be a licensed broker before agents could be a handyman? So, Dave, do you want to take that one?
Sure, and this is going to be a very unsatisfactory answer for everybody in the audience. The reason, from staff's perspective, they have to be a licensed broker is because that is what is in the ordinance that City Council adopted. Yeah. I am not trying to hide the ball here, but staff's job is to administer the ordinance as was adopted by City Council. Different council members may have had different motives for that requirement. There was lots of discussion on that requirement, I believe. So, unfortunately, that's not a question that staff is really in the position to answer here. We're here to talk about what is the process of administering this and answering questions that you may have related to how you go about getting your STR license.
Okay. Does maintenance, for example, a new roof or new windows, change your permit? And I'm going to assume right now that permit means short-term rental registration. And so the short answer is that some maintenance would not affect your short-term rental license, but some construction would affect your short-term rental license. So basic maintenance on a structure like a new roof and new windows, we don't anticipate causing major changes for your license. But if you have any questions about your project, please call our office before you start.
And this may be a theme this afternoon where we're going to get very specific questions and staff is going to say, we can't answer that, but feel free to call later. And again, we're not trying to hide the ball or be difficult. It's just that very specific questions often require very specific answers. And one, we want to make sure we have all the information to give you an accurate answer. And two, we don't want to give a general answer to a specific question and send everybody here out with a misunderstanding of how the process works.
The next question is, if you get a special use permit, why would you need a zoning compliance permit? And our intention is not to require two separate fees from someone who has obtained a zoning or a special use permit from the Planning Commission. But because the ordinance does require an applicant to have a zoning compliance determination, meaning you have to have that letter saying you've got your zoning compliance determination, we would also ask you to complete the zoning compliance determination application around the same time that you fill out your special use permit, so that we can issue the zoning compliance determination shortly after you receive the special use permit from the Planning Commission, and there would be no additional fee.
Right, so you would just be paying for the special land use, not the special land use plus the zoning compliance determination.
What else? This question is about time frame. The person says, I've had my application into the city for about 8 weeks, but my license is expiring before then. Am I going to lose my permit? So I think that's a good question. We've had lots of questions about time frame, and I don't know where the best place is to start on this one because we probably don't have a satisfactory answer on time frames either.
Yeah, I think, as I'm sure you all know, there are a whole bunch of these permit and license applications that are hitting staff all at once. And we are going as fast as we can to get through these because we know how important these are to everyone. Unfortunately, it's a fairly intensive process, so it takes us some time. If for some reason your permit expires before you are issued your new permit, for that period of time you are unlicensed and under the ordinance may not rent. All the more reason to, if you have an expiration coming up, get your applications in sooner rather than later so you can get in the queue.
I missed that, the last part of that. Say that again.
If your permit expires, even though you have a pending application, you still don't have a permit or license to rent. So you would not be able to rent until you were issued your new license. So the implied task, obviously, is if you have a license or that is going to be expiring soon, get your application in so you can get in the queue, and we will get to it as fast as we can.
I think we already answered this one. This is a question about the overlay district, how the special use process works, what are the fees. I feel like we answered that during the presentation. If you still have questions, feel free to call our office. This question is, how can I prepare for rental inspection prior to renewal? And the city has made a rental inspection checklist available on the website. There was one available previously under the old ordinance. There is one there now, so everyone has every opportunity to prepare for their inspection. Tried to make that as easy as possible. The inspection checklist should look very familiar to you. I think it is very similar to previous year's inspection sheets.
And I will clarify on that. You're required to have the property up to code. And it makes no sense for us to say, hey, here's your checklist and give you the city code, right? Like, that's unhelpful. So what we've done in working with the inspectors, Shays, and the building department is put together a list of those items that those inspectors are going to be specifically looking at, and those items that most greatly affect the health, safety, and welfare of the occupants. So that is, think of that as, it's not exhaustive, it is meant to be helpful, and it is a good starting point. And as a practical matter, if your rental is checking all those blocks, chances are you're being diligent, there's not going to be any other issues. But I say this because I don't want somebody to be surprised if an inspector comes in and while they're inspecting the property says, oh, you also have to fix this, and it's not on the checklist. Does that make sense to everybody? Okay.
And I want to take just one extra minute to show everybody the website. I know that it looks a little bit tiny on the screen, but just so you know kind of what you're looking for when you get there. So applications and forms are available toward the top. There we go. The URL is available in the presentation. It's up at the top of the screen. I know it's very tiny there, and it will be in the presentation also. So you can find all the forms here, operator designation forms, licensing application, zoning compliance review applications. The Good Neighbor Guide is still available there, the inspection checklist that we just talked about, fee schedules, frequently asked questions, which we may be updating after today's meeting. There's information about the hotline here as well, all sorts of things.
Today's presentation going to be on there too?
Yes, we can load that. the
Today's presentation will be uploaded on the website and uploaded to that page.
Put the screen up that shows the fees. That seems to be, I'm sorry to interrupt.
I just keep reading the questions.
Yeah, okay. So we'll keep reading the questions for now. Here's a question that says, I've surveyed 35 lakeshore communities of all sizes. After talking to numerous zoning administrators, not one of these communities has a zoning compliance fee. The South Haven fee, I can't quite make out the bottom. So I think the gist is that the fees will bring in a certain amount of money, and there are questions about that. Okay. 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 So the zoning compliance fee has been set to cover the expenses associated with reviewing everyone's applications and completing zoning compliance determinations. And I think it's important for everybody to know that that fee, along with others, are designed to cover the cost of the program. It has to run itself. And I don't know, Dave, Kate, if you want to jump in, feel free. And that's why that fee has been set the way it has.
This is the new part of the ordinance that I think a lot of people are surprised about, is the zoning compliance determination. The zoning compliance determination is part of it being considered a non-conforming use. This is why we have to determine the scope of the non-conformity. That's what the zoning compliance determination is there for. And it is going to be an exhaustive review, not only in that fee bakes in staff time as well as attorney review time. This is a pretty serious understanding of what the scope of the nonconforming is, and that's how we estimated the time. This is staff's best estimate as to what we think it's going to cost. Now, understanding we are dealing with a 2-year program. These fees are coming in to supplement this program being run for 2 years. The City Council has been extremely explicit that the STR program does not hit the general fund, that this is a self-sustaining program funded by short-term rentals and paid for by short-term rentals. Now, should we find at the end of our fiscal year that the fees are too high, then we will readjust those in June. But right now, this is our best estimate. I understand that this is not very welcome news, but this is the staff's best estimate. And unfortunately, this is what we are tasked with by the City Council. No, ma'am, I don't believe that there will be a refund. But and I'll be honest with you, I understand there's a lot of frustration, but I don't really appreciate being, yelled at from the audience, because there's a lot of people here, and this could get unruly quite quickly. So I'm just trying to lay out the understanding here about where we're at and how we got here. So with that, I'm going to give it back to Kelly so we can go on to the next question.
Okay.
Thank you, but we're not going to be yelling out questions from the audience. We're going to go back down to the question cards.
Okay, this next question says, if you're a current short-term rental in the overlay district, can you still apply for a special land use to become a conforming STR without jeopardizing your current permit? And yes, if you are your property is currently registered as a short-term rental in the overlay district, you do have an opportunity to apply for a special land use, and simply applying for a special land use does not jeopardize your current registration. Is there anything you want to add to that?
I don't want to tell anybody what to do, but this kind of links back to the lawful nonconforming issue. I think a hard thing for people to understand is that As a matter of public policy, inherent in the concept of a lawful nonconformity is that the legislative body has made the determination that that use should, over time, be eliminated. The public policy concerning lawful nonconforming uses is that over time they tend to attrit and eliminate themselves, which is why, as Kelly had on the screen, you have that part of the zoning ordinance that talks about a lawful nonconforming use may not be intensified, expanded, etc. That may cause practical difficulties. If you have a home that has been used as an STR and you want to remodel it, make it bigger, there's a high likelihood that that's going to be deemed an expansion of the lawful nonconforming use and not permitted. So, if you're in the overlay district and you have the opportunity to get special land use, that allows you to bring your property out of being a lawful nonconforming, in which the public policy is the gradual elimination of that use, to a form of a permitted use, and may give you more flexibility moving forward. Now, depending on what the terms of your special land use are, you may have to come back and if you want to make some drastic changes depending on how detailed that approval is. But getting special land use puts you in the camp of this use is okay as a matter of long-term public policy. So yes, there is, again, it's your choice, but there are, I think, some pretty obvious benefits to going ahead and moving your property from a lawful nonconforming use in the overlay district to a special land use in the overlay district. However, if you are not in the overlay district, you don't have that option, so you're stuck being a lawful nonconforming use.
Okay. So we have a couple of questions here about requirements for the floor plan and the site plan. And as a reminder, those things are submitted with the zoning compliance determination application. Megan, do you want to talk a little bit about what you're looking for when you receive those applications?
Yeah. So with the site plans, we are looking for an overlay of the parcel, anything that's on the parcel, the house, the garage, anything like that. These don't need to be to scale, and they can be hand-drawn by you guys. The only measurements we need for this is your off-street parking to determine how many spaces you have available. And then the floor plan is an overview of the inside of the home. We need to see where everything is located. There are some examples in the presentation that we will provide online as well for you to look at. This is going to show where your bedrooms are located within the home, and then we need to know where the egress is within the rooms, so where each window is located within the room as well. And that just helps us look and see if things have changed throughout the years and verify that you have proper egress.
There is a second question about whether the floor plan and site plan have to be submitted just once or every time we renew. And right now, the process is that every 2 years when you renew, you would submit these materials again. There is another question about fire extinguishers and how often they need to be serviced, and I think that we'll have to get back to you about that question. Okay. The ordinance says if you lose your license, you can apply for relicense after 365 days. Would a house still be permitted as an STR land use under the zoning ordinance if you lose your license and try to relicense after 365 days? I'm assuming this is a revocation question.
Yeah, section 2305 sub 2 of the zoning ordinance states that the zoning use of a parcel on which a lawful nonconforming short-term rental exists may continue unless and until the short-term rental registration or license lapses for a period of a year or more, or is revoked pursuant to site-specific chapters of the city code. So under that provision, if your license is revoked, it would take away your, if you're lawful nonconforming, it would take away your lawful nonconforming short-term rental land use.
Okay, we have a question here about short-term rental license transfers for new owners, like if a house is sold. And how can the new owners get permitted and what is the timing? Do you want to talk about that? Sure. That would be great.
So if a property has a current short-term rental certificate or license, when the property sells, the new owners would need to register the property in their own name, obviously, via the assessing office. We typically ask that the owners submit to the assessing office their property transfer affidavit. This is something that you get in your closing documents. It's usually forwarded to Van Buren County by your closing agent, whoever's working on the sale. That does usually take a lot more time than if you were to just turn it into our assessing office. So if timing is something that you want to keep on the lower end, I would suggest turning it into our office instead. Completely up to you. It gets done both ways. One's just faster. And then once they transfer the property into your name, then we can start the process of transferring the license into your name. So this process now under the new ordinance would mean that you submit the subsequent zoning compliance review application if a zoning compliance has already been done, and then you would get approval for that based on the information provided, and then you could move on to the short-term rental application.
And I want to be clear. When Megan says transfer, what she means is apply for a new license. The license are not transferable, so the new owner has to start the process again. Now, it may look like a transfer in the sense that the property was licensed under person A and now it's licensed under person B, but I want to be very clear. The license is unique to the owner and to the property that is licensed. A new owner has to get a different license.
Which would happen after you submit to a inspection. We would do an inspection. As long as everything passes, then you would move on to the next step, which would be the licensing fee. And then we sign your license. I sign it, and the new owner signs it, and then you are good to go for 2 years. The assessing office. Yep.
So there's a question here too, asking us to explain the new maximum occupancy determination and compliant sleeping areas.
So for occupancy, a bedroom must have access to a bathroom either on the same floor or an adjacent floor without traveling through another bedroom to be considered a bedroom in the home. And then the compliant sleeping areas would be like a living room type area, somewhere that would be considered to have proper egress and be available for sleeping, but not technically be a bedroom. So if you have a floor that was previously considered finished floor and got you occupancy, but there's only bedrooms on it, you don't get the extra 2 for the floor if there's not a compliant sleeping area on that floor other than the bedrooms. So it would be in addition to the bedrooms. Right? So sorry. You want to take it?
No.
So I'll
So-
read the
Go ahead, yeah.
The ordinance defines what a compliant bedroom is, and then defines what a finished story is, and also defines what I believe it's a flex sleeping area is.
If I can interrupt for just a second, I would encourage you all to find this ordinance and read it. It's number 1097. I'm not transposing numbers, right? And it is found on the city's document center. It's really only a few pages long, but it's really worth reading, especially for the occupancy question, because the bedrooms and the flex sleeping area, that part is new, and it does take a couple of reads and a couple of times of hearing it to really fully understand it. And I know Dave is going to go through it again right now, but I think it may be helpful to read it, and it may take another couple of times after leaving this room to fully process.
So I'm just going to read it once, and then everybody else can go home and read it a couple more times. So, and there's so if you, I understand this is new and it can be complicated. And I think honestly, like Kelly said, the best thing to do is to go through and read it through a couple times, and you'll start making the connections between how the different parts interact with each other, and having we can only go so far into the weeds before we're up here and we confuse ourselves, then you get confused, right? So maximum occupancy shall not exceed the lesser of the following: 2 occupants per bedroom. Remember, bedroom is a defined term. Plus 2 occupants per finished story. Remember, finished story is a defined term. Reduced to the number of occupants with compliant sleeping areas. So if you wanted to get the 2 for the finished story, there has to be the additional flex qualifying sleeping area, compliant sleeping area. And then sub B is 12 occupants, or if the dwelling unit was previously registered as a short-term rental under Article 10 of Chapter 10, the number of occupants the dwelling unit was authorized as part of its registration, whichever is greater. And I know that everybody's looking at me like that's clear as mud, and I think this is one of those that it's best to take it home, read it through a couple times, let it sink in, and if you have questions about your property specifically, go ahead and call the office and we will do our best to get you some clarification.
This question says, are properties in the B3 zoning district considered a Class 1 or Class 2 STR? So your zoning district, other than the overlay, has really very little to do with whether your certificate is Class 1 or Class 2. So for those of you who were previously registered as a business short-term rental, you're going to be applying now for a Class 1 license. If you were previously registered as a personal short-term rental, you will now apply as a Class 2 STR. And that is no matter what zoning district your property is in.
Just to break in here real quick, Luke is walking around to pick up anyone's cards if you have a question that you just submitted. Also, as we were talking, that something else pops up, we've got some more cards there. They don't have the printing on them, but happy to give you another card if you have more questions we can follow up with.
So this question is about the zoning compliance review. Is it done in person or at the house? And is there an opportunity to respond to questions before a decline letter is issued? So for the most part, the zoning compliance review is a desk review, meaning staff are not visiting the property. If there was some question and staff needed to visit the property, they would reach out to you and set up a time to do that. If there are questions that come up during the review, staff members are reaching out. I know we've had several occasions where we've had some questions so far, and Luke's been working on these, and he's been reaching out to property owners to ask questions so that we have every opportunity to have correspondence and have questions answered before a letter of declination would be issued. This question is again about zoning compliance determination and timing, and I know that we talked a little bit about that already, and whether or not anyone has completed the zoning compliance yet and are into licensing. We do have some completed zoning compliance determinations. Luke, do you remember how many?
I think at this point we have, sorry about that. I think at this point we've done about 12, but we have, I think, about 100 in our office. So
Yes.
we're working through them steadily.
And so a few of those 12 have applied now for the next step and are working on scheduling inspections and working their way through that process. don't know what that, what? Oh, under what rule will an STR lose its license if it expands the non-conforming use? Okay, so this is a non-conforming use question that, that non-conforming use section of the zoning ordinance is 2303. And so, it would be, again, a case-by-case determination based on the work that occurred, on what happened, and I anticipate there would be a lot of conversations that happened before a short-term rental license was lost. Dave, do you have anything to add there?
No.
Okay. Did you consider a zero tolerance for applications that do not pass the annual inspection or are a no-show for the inspection or do not pay their fees on time? There's a lot of work there. Do you want to take that one?
Sure.
Okay.
So applications that do not pass the inspection would then be granted a reinspection. The reinspection fee is $150. That's the cost that it costs for us to have Shays come out and do the inspection. And the same would go for a no-show. We'd obviously have to reschedule a reinspection for the property. And then if fees are not paid on time, they're not licensed. Nobody's getting a license without paying their fees.
The next question asks, is monthly rental excluded from these regulations? And I think it may depend on what you mean by monthly rental, but anything less than, or 28 days or less is considered short-term, right? 2 to 28 days. So rentals that were 29 days and over are considered long-term rentals, and at this time, long-term rental is not regulated by the city. This comment says, I am confused by the overlay map. If I have a current STR license and do not plan to make renovations to the home, would I need to apply for zoning compliance to renew my STR license or apply as normal? Since I have an STR license in place, do I need to be concerned about the overlay map? So, without knowing where this property is, it's a little bit difficult to answer. If the property is not in the overlay district, then the overlay would not apply. And if I plan to make, everyone needs to apply for zoning compliance determination before renewing their short-term rental registration. Again, renovations to the home are case-by-case basis. So I think we've answered those. If you already have a short-term rental license in place, you probably, again, I don't know if this person's registered under the old ordinance or the new ordinance, so maybe contact our office and we can try to help answer your questions one-on-one. During documentation review, do you prioritize those expiring the soonest? I think this is probably referencing zoning compliance determination, and we're taking them first come, first serve. They're not necessarily being completed all the way in that manner because some of them are more complicated than others and are taking longer. So that is the best answer I can give at this time. For the North Beach overlay, if you want to go to a Class 1, how does parking work? So the zoning ordinance now has short-term rental specific parking regulations. And so if you want to apply to the Planning Commission for a special land use permit, you need to be able to meet the off-street parking requirements. And so I know that's probably difficult for a lot of properties that are in the Monroe Park neighborhood. But if you have additional questions about that, we can talk one-on-one. This is about owner signature on the licenses. Is the signature just on file with the city or posted in the window? So under the new ordinance, we don't require licenses or certificates to be posted in the window any longer. The property owner will have to sign the license, but it won't have to be publicly posted. I think we have a lot of repeat questions. No. And I should say, the license itself won't be posted online, but through the city's BSNA software, every property that is registered as a short-term rental, the license that the property is licensed will show up as in the same way that it does now. It's just that we won't be posting the license itself. I don't believe the new ordinance outlines parking space size, but it is required in the site plan. What are parking size requirements? So parking, honestly, can be a little bit tricky because parking regulations have changed quite a bit over time, and that is why we ask for everybody to put their dimensions of their parking area on the zoning, on the site plan that you submit with the zoning compliance determination, whether your property was lawfully non-conforming and for parking because you were registered as early as 2016 or you were registered later. So that allows us to look everything over pretty carefully and determine whether or not you have the parking that you were required to have. The zoning ordinance now requires single-family residential parking spaces to be 9 by 18. So for anybody applying for a special land use permit, those are the dimensions that we're looking for. As the inspection process moves along, are metrics shared with STR holders, such as zoning inspections completed, remaining permits approved, and issued status, etc. These are not statistics that we've typically tracked and would not expect to make available. Sorry, this print is very tiny.
For anyone in the hallway, we have 2 seats that have opened up if you'd like to come in. We've got one down here in the front, and I think the one in the back there.
I can't read those. This is an additional question about parking in the North Beach for special land use and special land use requiring parking. We've had several questions about current owners registered under Article, Article 10, and the amount of time it's taking to get zoning compliance approvals and the upcoming May 1st date for everyone's expiration. the question is, what is the plan for turnaround of those permits? And how quickly should owners submit for new licensure? So, we know that this is a slow process right now, and we are working through it as quickly as we can. For those of you who are able to start the process now, we recommend doing it. We know that the winter is a slower time for most of you. It tends to be slower for us too. We have more inspection times available. We have staff availability to work through the zoning compliance determinations, to get your inspections scheduled and get you licensed under the new ordinance. We also have a prorated fee for those who are able to get registered early. And I don't remember the details of that off the top of my head, and so I won't spout them out. But we really do encourage everyone who's able to apply early so that you don't bump up against the holiday, the Memorial Day holiday and into the summer and not be able to rent.
For those that do currently have an STR registration that gets you until May 1st, but you decide to renew under the new ordinance early, you would receive a $40 discount per whole month that you're losing off of your current license. So if you started now and got everything registered by February, you would receive $40 off per whole month from your licensing fee, which was that final fee, which is $750 for the Class 1 and $250 for Class 2. Those are with the finance department, so I expect you guys to see those soon.
Can you
but
restate the question?
Oh, I'm so sorry. The refunds from 2025. So the council passed the prorated fees, but some people had already paid for their licenses and paid the full $600, but won't be getting the full year. Those are on a list to get refunds, which is $40 per month that you are losing off of that as well, and those are with the finance department.
Okay. I don't understand that question. Okay, let's pass them down and see if they understand those. I'm sorry. That's not a question. Measured. So this question is, what is the ultimate goal of this new process? What do you ideally hope to see happen, and will it be measured? So I think these are policy questions to some extent, right? As staff, our ultimate goal is to administer the ordinance that has been approved by our city council members. And we want to provide as efficient a process as we can. We know it's slow right now, but in coming years, as everyone knows what we're doing, things will click along a little bit better. How will it be measured? I think that's a very good question, and that's one that we'll need to talk about internally. This question is about why the city is not regulating long-term rentals, and I don't have a great answer for that. What qualifies or disqualifies a site from a short-term rental? So if your property has been previously registered as a short-term rental, you can continue to apply for licensure. If you have not been registered previously but are within the short-term rental overlay, you can apply for your property to be licensed as a short-term rental. If neither of those is the case, then I am sorry, but your property is not eligible to be registered as a short-term rental. We've had some questions. I think this is kind of similar to that question. We've had questions about some of the condominiums and PUDs in areas that were previously exempted. This ordinance doesn't use the exempt, non-exempt terminology anymore. Those were in the old ordinance, and so nothing is exempt or not exempt. There's no longer a saturation ratio that we're working with. This question is about the process for increasing occupancy. Buying a house currently approved for 8, but should be able to host 10. So, Dave, my understanding is that properties wouldn't necessarily increase in occupancy at this point, because the zoning compliance is determining kind of the scope of the nonconformity, and there wouldn't be an opportunity to increase occupancy in the way that there was under the previous ordinance.
I think that's correct. If you have a lawful non-conforming use, a factor in increased occupancy may be considered an increase in the scope of the use. If whoever's question this is, if this isn't a good answer, feel free to call the office and we'll try to work through it a little bit better for you.
Can the owner of the property be the operator of the property? Yes. And previously, the ordinance required a local agent to be within 45 miles of the property, and that's no longer the case. The owner of the property can be the operator. This is another question about remodeling and how to handle that construction and licensing, and again, we would prefer to answer those one-on-one. It's really going to be specific to your project and your timeline.
So I'm going to summarize here. We've got some more questions on the fees. And again, this may be an unsatisfactory answer to some, but I will do my best to explain it. So there really appears to be two methods of objecting to the fees in terms of arguments. One is the fees are just too stinking high. And the other is, I don't believe the fees accurately reflect the costs that the city is incurring. If you're making argument one, the fees are high, but the goal as set by City Council is not to subsidize the program with the taxpayer funds from the general fund. Okay, so to the extent your argument is they're just too high and I don't like to pay them, that's a policy decision that was made. We're not subsidizing the STR program. Argument number two, I don't believe these fees accurately reflect the costs being incurred to the city. These fees are based off of staff's best estimates in terms of the cost. And I want to, when I say cost, I'm talking holistic costs. So personnel, equipment, all the things that go into running an STR program, legal review, things like that. So it's not just staff time, if you will. The goal is to capture every cost that is associated with the program. And not just the processing of the application and the zoning compliance fee, but also the oversight for the 2 years of the program. So any enforcement action taken under the program, any phone calls received regarding the program, those are all costs associated with the program. Now, we acknowledge that there may be a STR that your review is easy, and you play by the rules, so there's no enforcement issues. But that's the goal is not to, it's impossible to tailor it to every specific individual. And of course, everybody would come in here and say, oh yes, mine is easy and I'm going to be, 100% above board. So what we did is we took the anticipated cost of running the program and providing oversight to an STR for a year, and then we tried to distribute that amongst what we thought would be the cost per an STR. And I know that's probably not a satisfactory answer. It can be somewhat confusing. It's kind of similar to the conversation council had regarding electric rates and the fact that, like, yeah, they are high, but again, the goal is to cover all of the cost of the program, and we have to allocate those costs to the individual STRs the best we can to say, this is the amount of STRs we anticipate, here you go. Now, some of the costs, like the inspection fees, those are fees charged by Shays pursuant to an agreement with the city. So there's no markup on those fees. It's just, this is what the cost to that inspection is. So that's the number that is in the fee schedule. Zoning compliance determinations, that is to cover legal fees and potentially staff time. And I want to be clear too, again, the goal is to cover the cost of the whole program. And what we did and what council did, because I think council has really made an effort to try to keep the fees as low as possible while understanding that the program has to run itself. And as you see, like, they council went ahead and prorated fees based off if you had a current license and you were applying for a new license. Some communities won't do that. They'll just say, if you want to come under the new program, that's great, but you're not entitled to a refund because that's a you issue. Council went out of the way to try to figure out a way to prorate those fees. And what we broke it up, again, the best we could by step in the process. So we tried to say, here's a fee associated with submitting the application, here's a fee associated with the zoning compliance, here's a fee associated with this. And we may be off in our estimates, but the number we're really concerned with is at the end of the day, is the program where it's supposed to be? Is it covering the cost of the program and not being used to raise general revenues? So if, for example, the cost of performing function A was estimated too high, but the cost of performing function B was estimated too low, it's gonna come out in the wash. Does the program capture all the cost and is not used as a revenue making measure? And unfortunately, it's a 2-year fee, so until the new, staff will review at the end of the fiscal year, and we'll review again, and we'll continue to update City Council in terms of these are the costs being incurred, and based off the number of rentals, the fees may go up, the fees may go down, because just like Council talked about with the electric utilities, there are sunk costs to running a program, right? No matter how many rentals you have to have the staff there. So again, and I understand this is probably not a satisfactory answer, but I can assure you that we're doing, as a staff, our best to make a honest recommendation to City Council. And City Council, I truly believe, is doing their best to try to capture the costs associated with the program and nothing more. And then we'll wait a little bit, we'll reevaluate, just like all fees, right? We will reevaluate once we have more information, and we'll go from there. I got another one. How do you enforce the short-term rental ordinance when we have land use? There is the licensing ordinance, then there is the zoning ordinance, and you have to comply with both. So you got to get a go at zoning station, and you got to get a go at licensing station. And if you are in violation of either one of those, which I'm sure none of you will be, right? We will do our best to work through that process with you and get you into compliance and hopefully get you there without having to issue any tickets. Because again, our goal as staff is to administer the ordinance adopted by council in the most efficient way we know how. And people run afoul of the ordinance. Our goal is compliance. We're not out here to hammer people. We're not out here to issue tickets. We will if we have to, but we just really want to get you into compliance. And staff is really making a concerted effort at Kate's direction to take as many phone calls as we can, to answer as many questions as we can, to be as open as we can. And, you know, our ask to everybody here is just be understanding, be patient. We know these are important things to you, and we are working as fast as we can. It is our intention to give you the best information we have in the quickest way we can. And I understand sometimes that may fall short of your expectations, but we've got a bunch of dedicated public servants up here who are doing our level best to administer an STR program. And I think really, if you looked at other communities in terms of how responsive staff is, I think our folks in the building and zoning department are really doing a really good job to be accessible.
This question goes back to fees and asks, why would a 2-bedroom unit be charged the same fees as a 4 or 6-bedroom unit? And I think the answer to this is similar to the one Dave gave a few minutes ago about, you know, fees needing to be charged similarly across the program. And the truth is that the administration associated with a 2-bedroom unit is very similar as that for a 4 or 6-bedroom unit. And for those of you who are accustomed to having inspections, you know, we are giving everyone the same time, the same 20-minute block for their inspection. And an inspection for a house with 6 bedrooms really doesn't take much more time than an inspection for a unit with 2 bedrooms.
And the cost to the city,
Is
the
same.
cost to the city is the same.
There are 2 full-time people that administer this program in addition to Kelly's time. Those are sunk costs that have to be recovered. That's why this is across the board. I understand there was a lot of people who wanted to have it fluctuating for the square footage. I don't know how to make sure that that number is still coming in so that this is not hitting the general fund.
And
so that was something that was considered by council, but quite frankly, that's a sliding scale. I don't have a crystal ball that's that good.
And the Shays performs the inspections. The cost of the city for a Shays inspection is X dollars per inspection,
And it's
X dollars
passed
to
through.
reinspection.
no matter what, no
No
matter
matter
the size.
what, no matter the size. So those costs, there's no markup on it's just, that's what the inspection fee is.
Also, just real quick, just with regards to compiling data and information, compiling 8 years worth of inspections and certificates and applications is really going to take the same amount of time whether you have a 2-bedroom house or a 10-bedroom house. It's the same amount of documents that are going to be reviewed. It's the same amount of site plans that are going to be reviewed, and it's largely, from an administrative point of view, going to take the same amount of time.
So we've got 1-bedroom condo, and it takes about 10 minutes max for them to walk through our condo every year, and we've owned it for 28 years.
Sir, the cost to the city is the same.
So if we called Shays, they would confirm that that would be the same cost.
Shays, yes, yes. That's exactly right. So we have a flat fee for the different inspection versus reinspection with Shays. It's part of an agreement that the city has. It's available, I believe, online, but yes, Shays will confirm it. We are just giving you the same price. We're not adding anything additional to it. So it's simply a pass-through.
Sticking with fees for just a quick moment, the question was about the $900 zoning compliance fee, how often it will be charged and how often this fee will be raised. So the $900 zoning compliance determination fee is paid the first time you apply. Subsequent zoning compliance determinations for your property will be $250. And right now I can't speak to when the fees might be raised. They'll be evaluated periodically by staff and city council, and I don't know how often that fee will change. Oh yes, so every 2 years you would pay a zoning compliance determination fee when you submit your application. Thank you.
The zoning compliance After your first initial year of $900, the next time you apply 2 years later, you will pay the $250 for a zoning compliance determination. That's what we understand the fees now. Again, we're always looking at the fees, so I can't say in the future what that's going to be, but that's what we anticipate it to be right now. And then we've set up the other fees, like the shades inspection fee, as well as the application fee. Those are pretty much what you pay right now on an annual basis. It comes up to $600. So that's the same going forward. It's just the new part is the zoning compliance. So the first time you apply under this scheme, it's $900. And as we've discussed, that covers our staff time. And as Luke just said, there's a lot of documents to go through, and then there's legal review. That's the core of the $900 for the zoning compliance fee. The next time you apply, 2 years down the road, maybe it's 27 or 28, whichever way you go, you would be paying $250 for the zoning compliance, because that will be, you'll have to resubmit that part. Now, the question is whether or not that fee changes. I don't know. We always are going to look at those fees and see, are we too far in the black, too far, or are we in the red? Because again, this is supposed to be a neutral. It's supposed to be revenues to costs, and is being as zero as possible.
And the key there is as possible, right? This is not an issue of mathematical precision. It's, are we in the ballpark?
This question says, if I have a personal STR license and I'm not in the overlay district, will I ever have the opportunity to obtain a Class 1 license? Have you ever considered giving more days to Class 2 licenses, more than 28 days? So as you all know, Class 2 or formerly personal rentals licenses are limited in the number of days they can rent every year. And at this time, there is not an opportunity for someone outside of the overlay district who doesn't have a Class 1 license now or has not been previously registered as a business to obtain a Class 1. So if you had a personal license previously, you would apply for a Class 2 license now. And I know that in the City Council conversation, the personal certificates, the Class 2 licenses, those were discussed at great length, and great consideration was given to how to handle those and whether to raise or lower the number of days that folks could rent, and at this time there just haven't been any changes.
Do we have any more comment cards?
I have one more. This is just clarification again. Can the STR owner be the operator no matter where they live? Yes, under the new ordinance, the STR owner can be the operator.
If we haven't got to, if you have any more questions, we do have more comment cards here. Otherwise, you're free to email us, str@southavenmi.gov. We're happy to incorporate a lot of these questions into the FAQ to make sure that we're updating and getting as much information out there. I really appreciate your time. I know it's been tough for staff to implement because we understand this is a new ordinance, and it's tough for us to tell you all some of the stuff that's going to be changing, because we know that this is one, it can be confusing, and then two, it's been kind of an arduous process getting to this point, and there's a lot of confusion out there. So we're here to help try to clarify things. If there's anything we've missed, please email us. Thank you all for coming.